Hello again, it's Alan Macon, the local history tutor from Knowsley Face, with a continuing series of short local history videos which contain information of local history from the Knowsley and Liverpool areas of Merseyside. Today's short video is entitled Anti-German Riots, Liverpool 1915, also known as the Lusitania Riots. The Lusitania was a famous ship. Some historians have claimed the second most famous ship in history, the first one being the Titanic, both with strong connections with Liverpool's maritime history. So the short video will look at why Liverpool was involved in these so-called anti-German riots, the history behind Liverpool's small German community, how they suffered during these riots in terms of their businesses, pubs, pork butchers were heavily destroyed, during the summer of 1915. We will look at how Liverpool was reported in the national press and how indeed these riots weren't just in Liverpool, they were in most major cities in the summer of 1915. And we'll finish off by looking at Liverpool's German connection to arguably its most famous, iconic statues, the liver birds. So firstly, we look at the anti-German riots, also known as the Lusitania riots. So first thing, I'll zoom in. This is a photograph of Liverpool, its famous pierhead, with the Liver building in the background, just about to be built. Didn't get finished till 1911. So this dates from 1907, 4 years before the Liver building was finished. And there's the Lusitania there, one of the largest ships then built on the oceans. So that's entitled Liverpool Lusitania at the landing stage, Liverpool's famous landing stage. Goes on to say the sinking of the famous Lusitania took place on the 7th of May 1915. The first, as far as England was concerned, or Britain was concerned, the outbreak of war was August 1914. So on the 7th of May 1915 became a major event, recognised as a major event in the First World War. Many believe it was this event that would eventually bring America into the war in 1917. A German submarine fired a torpedo into her hull off the coast of Southern Ireland. The Lusitania sank within 18 minutes. 1,198 people were killed, 785 were passengers, and 413 were crew. The connection with Liverpool goes on to say many of the crew were from Liverpool, the majority from the Liverpool Irish communities in the north end of the city. This led within the next day, the 8th of May, riots broke out across Liverpool and spread not just through Britain, but also to other cities across the world. Such was the impact of the sinking of the Lusitania. The north end of the city saw the first outbreaks of riots, but soon spread all over the city and was well documented in the national and the local press. I'll just show you this photograph first. This is Breck Road. This building is still standing today, known as the Britannia Hotel. You can see all the windows are being smashed. And the people standing around, policemen on the corner. So this dates from 1915. So it goes on to say the Britannia Hotel, 283 Breck Road, with the corner of Commerson Street still there today. That building's still there. Was seen after the attack. The licensee was a gentleman by the name of Charles Bobby. He was actually born in Liverpool, according to the records, in 1868. His parents were both known, and people knew who they were both born in Germany. Charles's son Christopher served in the British Army but was killed in 1918 fighting for his country. So it's one of those great ironies. His pub was totally demolished in 1915. 3 years later he loses his son fighting for the British. If you look again at this handout, it's the same building. This particular photograph is 7 years old, taken in 2013, but the building is still there today, the former Britannia Hotel. So all their buildings that were there in 1915 still can be found in Breck Road today. The so-called Lake Streets, named after the lakes in the Lake District. The local people call them the Lake Streets. This one's got a connection with Commerston. So Goes on to say Liverpool had a small German community back in the Victorian times, probably largely through trade with Germany and its northern ports like Hamburg. Liverpool had a small German community spread throughout the city. Many owned pork butchers, I'm not quite sure why, but a lot of them did it, pork butchers. And these were a prime target for the rioters. This was an actual typical pork butchers to be found in Liverpool, with the meat hanging outside. People would have a heart attack today, but that was obviously very common. People quite didn't understand the spread of disease. But hang meat outside a shop was not uncommon in the whole of the country, the whole of the world. It goes on to say, that example, the black and white photograph, the Stanley Pork Shop at 416 Prescott Road, Stanley, district of Liverpool, is but one example of many. One of the men employed was a Charles Keitel. We know he was born in Germany. Most Germans in Liverpool changed their names, anglicised their names, to sound more English and avoid any hostility. Then we have a photograph. So again, it's only a few years old. It's entitled 142 Smithdown Road, scene of an attack during the riots, and this was documented in the Liverpool Echo. So this building is still here today on Smithdown Road. All the buildings around are still to be found today. So they were certainly there in 1907. So this is an article from the Liverpool Echo dated 11th of May 1915. And it goes on to say, a large pork shop at the corner of Smithdown Road and Arundel Avenue, as in the photograph, has been absolutely wrecked. All the windows have been smashed and the stock commandeered or thrown into, it goes on to say, the street. Women hurled strings of sausages at one another, and one woman in a neighbouring street went down on her knees and scrubbed the pavement with a joint of pork. Other women went home with their aprons full of pork and bacon. What can one say? This is an article that appeared in the famous London Times, dated the 13th of May 1915, and it's entitled The Liverpool Riots. Damage estimated £40,000. The bill would have to be, the £40,000 would be taken up by the local taxpayers, the ratepayers. There's an interesting bit where it says, this afternoon 150 of the German residents who have been taken charge by the police, removed by special train and under military escorted to Lime Street, where they were taken out of the city, but there was no hostility shown towards them. This is just like 6 days after the sinking of the Lusitania, according to the national newspaper, the London Times. We move on again, the local newspapers. This appeared in the Liverpool Daily Post and Echo, or Daily Post and Mercury. The Mercury disappeared in the 1950s. It says, photos from the Liverpool Daily Post dated the 11th of May shows a crowd around the German shop on Scotland Road. Again, so you can just see, it's a bit fuzzy, I'm afraid, but literally hundreds, if not thousands of people turned out outside a German shop in Scotland Road, and it was totally wrecked, according to the reports. It is worth noting that as the riots in Liverpool carried on, the anger of the crowds turned from just being anti-German to being anti-Scandinavian, Italian, Chinese and Russian. Some brave local people tried to shelter some of these small communities at risk to their own lives and properties. And lastly, I'd like to finish off by this gentleman called Carl Bernard Bartels. He's the gentleman who basically designed the liver birds on top of the liver buildings. And I'll finish off by just giving a potted history of how it ended up in Liverpool. Few people in Liverpool even today realise that the liver building birds, a cross between an eagle and a cormorant, were designed by a German sculptor, Carl Bernard Bartels, a woodcarver and resident from the Black Forest in Germany, who came to live in England way back in 1877 and took British nationality. Bartels won a competition for his job and created the magnificent design we see today, two 18 feet high copper sculptures completed in 1911. Carl was imprisoned in the Isle of Man, this is the First World War, and sent back to Germany at the end of the war, only returning many years later. The city of Liverpool removed all references of his achievements from the record books, literally. It took the Liverpool authorities 90 years to recognise the honour Karl Marx for his work And obviously you can see very closely the Liver building on top of the Liver Bairn on top of the Liver building. So as usual, I'd like to stop there and say if you'd like to leave any comments, please do. Please stay tuned to Knowsley Recovery, Knowsley Face websites, for any tips on mental health and well-being. Thank you.